Samantha Whitmore's life looked picture perfect from the outside. She had the elegant suburban home, the devoted husband, and a thriving career in interior design that allowed her to create beauty wherever she went. But beneath the surface, behind the pristine facade, there was a restlessness inside her, a yearning she couldn't quite name. Mark, her husband of 10 years, was everything a woman could ask for. Successful, dependable, handsome in a composed and refined way. He provided for her, cherished her, and never once gave her a reason to doubt his love. Yet somewhere along the way, their marriage had become a well-rehearsed play, an act that felt more mechanical than passionate. Conversations revolved around finances, schedules, and dinner parties. Passion had been replaced by routine, kisses by habitual pecks on the cheek, and love by obligation. Then she met Alex. She hadn't been looking for trouble when she walked into the gym that morning. It had started as a simple commitment to herself, taking care of her body, filling the empty hours when Mark was buried in work. That was where she first noticed him. He was different from Mark in every conceivable way. Younger, wilder, magnetic. His body was sculpted by years of dedication, his confidence effortless. When he looked at her, it wasn't with the distant familiarity of a husband who had seen her 1,000 times. No, Alex looked at her like she was something new, something thrilling. Their first conversation had been innocent enough. A joke about her struggling with the treadmill, a casual compliment about her toned physique. But soon their encounters became more frequent. He started lingering near her, spotting her during workouts, offering tips on form. The air between them crackled with an unspoken electricity, and Samantha felt alive in a way she hadn't in years. At first, she told herself it was harmless. Flirting wasn't a crime. She wasn't doing anything wrong. But then came the texts, late-night messages that sent shivers down her spine. "Thinking about you," he had written once. And God help her, she had been thinking about him too. The temptation grew stronger with every passing day. She found herself dressing a little differently before heading to the gym, choosing outfits that highlighted her curves, spraying on just a little extra perfume. She was careful, always careful, but the thrill of the risk was intoxicating. One evening, after a particularly intense session at the gym, Alex suggested they grab a smoothie together. It was a simple request, but Samantha hesitated. She knew where this road led. Yet when she looked into his playful, daring eyes, she found herself nodding. They sat in a quiet corner of a nearby cafe, her heart pounding as he leaned in closer than necessary, his fingers grazing hers ever so slightly. They talked about everything and nothing, his love for extreme sports, her passion for design, the things that made them feel alive. And for the first time in years, she felt truly seen. "You deserve more, Sam," he murmured, his gaze locking onto hers. The way he said her name sent a thrill through her. "You deserve excitement." She should have left then, should have walked away before the point of no return. But she didn't, because deep down she knew he was right. As she drove home that night, her fingers still tingling from his touch, Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that she was standing on the edge of a dangerous precipice. One step closer, and there would be no turning back. And the most dangerous part? She wasn't sure she wanted to. Samantha woke to an empty bed. Mark had left early again, off to another meeting, another responsibility that took precedence over their marriage. She stretched, the memories of the previous night creeping back into her thoughts like forbidden whispers. Alex, his touch, his words, his presence. Everything about him felt exhilaratingly dangerous. But danger had consequences. She spent the morning trying to ignore the nagging guilt that crept up her spine. She loved Mark, didn't she? He had given her stability, a life free of struggle. But passion? That was something he had long stopped giving her. She told herself she wasn't doing anything wrong. She hadn't crossed the line. Not yet. When her phone buzzed, her stomach twisted with anticipation. Alex. She hesitated before reading the message. "Meet me tonight. My place. No more hiding." Her heart pounded. This was it. The moment of no return. She should say no. She should block his number, but instead her fingers hovered over the keyboard before she typed the words that sealed her fate. "I'll be there." That evening, as she stood outside Alex's sleek apartment, her breath came in a short, shallow gasp. The city lights cast a golden glow on the glass-paneled building, a stark contrast to the darkness unfurling inside her. She knocked, barely able to contain the mix of dread and anticipation pooling in her stomach. The door swung open. Alex stood there, his smirk laced with mischief. "I knew you'd come." She stepped inside, feeling the weight of her decisions pressing down on her shoulders. He wasted no time, reaching for her hand and pulling her into his embrace. His scent enveloped her, a mix of cologne and something purely him. Samantha knew she should leave, that there was still a chance to walk away, but when his lips brushed against hers, hesitation melted into hunger. Hours later, she lay in tangled sheets, staring at the ceiling. Alex slept soundly beside her, a satisfied smile tugging at his lips. Guilt gnawed at her, but beneath it, a darker thrill coursed through her veins. She had done it. She had crossed the line. But secrets had a way of surfacing. As she gathered her things and slipped out of bed, her phone vibrated on the nightstand. She grabbed it, her heart stopping at the message flashing across the screen. "You think he won't find out?" Her breath hitched. The number was unknown. Panic surged through her. Someone knew. Her hands trembled as she looked back at Alex, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing. Samantha had stepped into the fire, and now there was no turning back. Samantha couldn't focus. The unknown message haunted her, each word a blade pressing against her sanity. Who knew? And how? Every time her phone vibrated, her pulse spiked, fear wrapping around her like a vice. At home, Mark was the same as ever, distant yet present, absorbed in his work. But Samantha couldn't shake the feeling that something had shifted. His glances lingered a second too long, his tone held a hint of something unreadable. Did he suspect? Or was she simply unraveling under the weight of her own guilt? Days passed and the messages didn't stop. Each one was a reminder that she was being watched. "I see you. How long until he does?" Her hands trembled as she deleted each text, but the paranoia remained. She stopped meeting Alex, ignored his calls. But the damage had already been done. Then one evening, Mark came home early. "Dinner?" he asked casually, setting his briefcase down. She forced a smile. "Sure." They sat across from each other at the dining table, candlelight flickering between them. It felt oddly intimate, something rare in their marriage as of late. He watched her, his gaze steady. "How was your day?" he asked, his voice smooth. "Fine," she said quickly. Too quickly. He took a sip of wine, eyes never leaving hers. "You've been distracted lately." Her breath caught in her throat. "Just work." A silence stretched between them, thick with unspoken words. Then his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression unreadable. "Something wrong?" she asked, voice shaky. He let out a small chuckle. "Number just a message from an old friend." Relief rushed through her, but it was short-lived. "Actually," he continued, setting his phone down, "I've been meaning to ask you something." Her fingers tightened around her fork. "What is it?" He leaned forward slightly, his gaze locking onto hers with quiet intensity. "Are you happy, Sam?" The question hit her harder than she expected. Was she? Her lips parted, but no words came. Instead, her phone vibrated against the table. Her heart stopped. Mark looked down at the screen before she could grab it. His expression darkened. He reached for her phone. "Mark!" He turned the screen toward her, his voice eerily calm. "Who is Alex?" Samantha's blood ran cold. The game was over. Samantha sat frozen, her breath shallow as Mark held up her phone. His face was eerily calm, but his grip on the device was tight, his knuckles white. "Who is Alex?" he repeated, his voice measured but cold. Denial was pointless. Lies would only make it worse. But what could she say? The truth would shatter everything. She swallowed hard. "Mark, Don't," he interrupted, tossing the phone onto the table. The sound echoed through the silent dining room. "I already know." Her stomach dropped. "You... what?" Mark leaned back in his chair, studying her with unsettling patience. "I've known for weeks, Sam. I hired a private investigator the moment I noticed you pulling away." The blood drained from her face. Weeks? How had she not seen it? How had she not felt his eyes watching her every move? She opened her mouth, but he continued. The late nights, the extra time at the gym, the way you started smiling at your phone, he scoffed. You thought I wouldn't notice? Her mind raced, searching for a way to diffuse the situation, but it was too late. The dam had already broken. I didn't mean for it to happen, she whispered, her voice barely audible. Mark's jaw clenched. That's what they all say. Tears welled in her eyes, but she refused to let them fall. I love you, Mark. Do you? He cut in sharply. Or did you just love the security I gave you while sneaking around with him? Silence stretched between them, thick and suffocating. Then Mark exhaled slowly, standing up. He didn't shout. He didn't break anything. Instead, he smiled, a chilling, knowing smile that made her skin crawl. I want a divorce. Samantha's breath caught in her throat. She had imagined this moment 1,000 times, but not like this. Not with him so calm, so controlled. Mark, please. He held up a hand, silencing her. I'm not finished. He walked around the table, standing beside her, looking down at her like a predator toying with its prey. I've already spoken to my lawyers. The house? It's mine. The accounts? Frozen. You'll walk away with nothing. Panic clawed at her chest. You can't do that, he smirked. Watch me. She had underestimated him. While she had been playing with fire, Mark had been preparing for the inferno. He wasn't just going to leave her, he was going to destroy her. I trusted you, he murmured, almost to himself. I gave you everything, and this is how you repay me? Samantha's hands trembled. She had lost control, and worse, she had underestimated just how ruthless Mark could be. As he turned to leave, he glanced back, his eyes dark with finality. Pack your things, Sam. You have until the end of the week. The door closed behind him, leaving her alone in the wreckage of what used to be her perfect life. But it wasn't over, not yet. If Mark thought she would just disappear without a fight, he was wrong, because Samantha Whitmore wasn't going down without one. Samantha sat in the empty house, the walls echoing with memories that now felt like ghosts. Mark's words still rang in her ears, cold, final, ruthless. She had thought she could handle the consequences of her affair, but she had underestimated the fury of a betrayed man. The days passed in a blur. She barely ate, barely slept. Mark's legal team worked swiftly, stripping her of everything she had once believed was hers. The bank accounts were inaccessible. The home she had designed down to the last detail was no longer hers to claim. She had tried to fight, to reason, but Mark's connections were powerful, his resolve unshakable. But she wasn't done yet. She sat at the dining table, the same one where her life had unraveled, staring at the divorce papers. She could sign them and disappear, let Mark have his victory, or she could take control of her own fate. A knock at the door startled her. Her breath caught as she opened it to find Alex standing there. His eyes searched hers, concern etched into his handsome face. Sam, I've been calling you for days, he said, stepping inside. She shook her head, pressing her fingers to her temples. I can't. Alex, I don't know what to do. He's taking everything. I have nothing left. Alex's expression hardened. That's not true. You have me. She wanted to believe him, to fall into the safety of his arms. But reality was far crueler. You don't understand. Mark isn't just going to let me walk away. He's making sure I suffer. Alex's jaw tightened. Then fight back. Don't let him control you. A bitter laugh escaped her lips. Fight how, Alex? I have no money, no home. He's won. But as the words left her mouth, an idea formed. There was one thing she still had. One thing Mark had always feared. The truth. Samantha moved toward her desk, yanking open a drawer and pulling out an old flash drive. She held it up, meeting Alex's gaze. Mark built his career on being untouchable, on keeping his hands clean. But I know better, and so do his records. Alex's brows furrowed. What are you saying? A slow, determined smile spread across her lips. I'm saying it's time for Mark to lose something for once. For the first time in weeks, she felt something other than fear. She felt power. Mark had tried to erase her, but Samantha Whitmore wasn't just going to survive, she was going to win.